John William Graham, a Western Union, Iowa native, and an Upper Iowa graduate, would start his path to a military career, but after first being turned down and told to go back to farming. John would later be drafted in February after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and told to report to Fort Des Moines, where he would start his military service, as well as his long correspondence back home to his parents. Upon completion of his training as a ground crewman for aircraft support, John would be sent to an air base in Italy known as the Pantanella Air Base, attached to the 464th. Here, John would get a chance to see parts of Italy, but most of the time he spends it on base. Correspondence is still taking place between him and his parents, but not as much or as often. In May 1945, John would later be stationed in Trinidad, a Caribbean island closer to home and further from harm's way. It is here that John's letters start to become more about the mundane, day-to-day life on base and the everyday tasks, but not much is said about what's going on in the world. John is doing his best not to excite his parents, yet he still has parents who are worrying for his son as they hear the news around them. Heavy losses are taking place on islands in the Pacific, Marines getting closer to mainland Japan, the Japanese emperor warning of his use of kamikazes, awaiting for beach invasion by U.S. Marines. Other key local events take place as John writes home. James Byrd is appointed Secretary of State, key supporter of the use of the atomic bomb to end the war in the Pacific. John talks of the use of this bomb, showing the most excitement in one of his letters in a long time, talking of celebrations in honor of the bomb's future uses. Some events do not make it into the letter between John and his parents, such as the burden of rationing. Just as John does his best to keep spirits high and not cause concern in the letters, his parents possibly do the same and keep silent about the home troubles, being that John does not talk about them. September 15th, 1945. John writes home for the last time. Talking of his return from Trinidad, John goes to Jefferson's Barracks, Missouri, where he is discharged on September 26, 1945. Taking a bus back to Cedar Rapids, he then hitchhikes home the rest of the way, returning to the profession that he had started once before the war, as a farmer, which he continues for 34 years after.